Use your eyes, know yourself, realize, understand and empathize. We could learn to fill the world with love.
Hi everyone, I'm Marianne Cosgrove, CEO of Humanists Australia. Today we're talking about why I am a humanist. And I have with me today Allan, one of our directors, Dr. Neville Buch, our history and cultural advisor, and Brian, who is our new creative director. But let's start off with Brian because Brian is our most recent member of the team here today. Brian, what brought you to Humanists Australia?
Okay, well, it's a pretty long story. It's a fairly long journey, you know. I guess it really started off the way that I became a humanist, or realised that that's what I was. Started off with that spiritual journey. Did you guys go through that thing in your life? I think most of us do, where you're starting to question things like God and what it's all about. You go through that, and first of all, I realised that I'm not religious. I realised that I didn't believe in God. So that was the first thing, becoming an atheist. Hang on a minute. I'm just experimenting as we go. Yeah, so
live stream, so we need to do a bit of experimenting.
We do, but look, this is the perfect time to do it, and we can do this. We've got, if you look at the top, you can see on the left there, top left, if you guys can see it. So we've just got one viewer, and I don't know, someone might be in there having a listen to us. They can comment if they want. So anyone that's there, please feel free to comment. But this is just the perfect situation for practicing for the future. But yeah, look, so that was it. I suppose when I was a teenager, or maybe in my early 20s, I pretty much, because you ask all those questions, if there is a God, why do we have wars? Why do we have famine? Why do we have all these things? Like, these are just the basic, almost childish questions that you ask. And it started with that and just went on. And I realized that I had different views. My views were progressive politically. Yes, I spiritually had no religion. And as I went along, I became familiar or aware of that term, humanism. And it was always kind of around and in my head, and I kept going back to it and think everything that I am in my life, with my political views and spiritual views, is described in one word, and it's humanism. So yeah, that's my journey, really, basically.
Les, did you have a similar experience to Brian?
Well, quite similar. I think the first memories I have of being subjected to religion was in primary school, where we had a 1 hour a week where a religious instructor would come in and talk about how we're sinful and Jesus died for us and God wasn't decided that we weren't doing as we were told, and he wiped out all of humanity. So we were subjected to all of the usual biblical stories, and I didn't really take them on board. I think from a really early age, I was very interested in the sciences. I started off being interested in astronomy, and then in chemistry, and then in electronics, which became my first career. So with this being scientifically minded, I was always very skeptical about these stories. And then I think it was in my late teens, I don't know why, it might have been my friend Vince, who's now sitting on the board of Humanists Australia with me. He gave me a copy of Joachim Karl's The Misery of Christianity. And I found that quite impactful, because we all think when we're growing up that if you're not religious, you can't be a good person. And this really blew the lid off that kind of thinking for me. And then I read other humanist philosophers like Bertrand Russell and Kit Mowat. And it wasn't like I got converted to humanism. I found out that I was really a humanist all the way along. And then when I went to RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, studying electronics, to get into my first career, in my class was Gary, And he was a really nice guy. We were good friends, but he was quite a devout Christian. And we would meet in the cafe and we would talk about religion and philosophy. And I'd always, have a different view to him because I was an atheist. And he would always end the discussion, go and read so-and-so or go and read such and such. So I did read some of these Christian authors, and that really piqued my interest more in how could people believe in this supernatural being for which we don't have any manifest evidence for. And like Brian was saying, what's called the problem of evil was a really big question for me. If God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect, omnibenevolent, then how can you reconcile that belief with all the pain and misery and suffering in the world? So talking to Gary and all these big discussions I had with my friend Gary, that really piqued my interest so much that while I started my first career in electronics, I enrolled at La Trobe University as a mature age student. And my main initial interest was in the philosophy of religion. That's why I got in there. But then I found out I got more interested in a couple of other areas in philosophy. What's called epistemology, or philosophy of knowledge, and moral philosophy, ethics. And then at that early age of, I think in my early 20s, I joined the local state humanist society, which was called the Humanist Society of Victoria. So they were my early years and my early introductions into humanism.
That sounds fairly similar to my own. But Neville, how about you?
I suppose I came to humanism through studying history, and more particularly, I think, thinking about cultural beliefs in history. So in my first year at the University of Queensland in the Department of History, I had a teacher who was a liberal and Anglican who taught on Renaissance humanism and introduced me particularly to Erasmus, the Catholic humanist. And it opened up my mind, coming from a liberal evangelical sort of background, and it sort of made me realize that a lot of religious beliefs are actually cultural beliefs that were shaped in the evolution of historical understanding. So, that's how I came into it.
Yeah.
I remember as a child thinking I really wanted to live an ethical and compassionate life. I looked at people who were suffering when I was traveling through South America with my parents, and I thought, I want to be the kind of person who reaches out to people and helps them. I wanted to be a good person. And so I experimented with going to church for a little while. But like Les, I have a scientific background, and I just didn't feel like there was evidence for a God, and I saw people behaving in ways that I didn't like either. And I thought, well, they're saying you should be kind to people and non-judgmental, but that wasn't what I was seeing. And so I left the church. And I remember people saying to me when I was a teenager, oh, you're not religious. Well, you can't possibly be moral or ethical. and that just blew my mind. I thought, well, really, why can't a human being be a good person just because they think it's the right thing to do and they want to live in a society where people treat each other with kindness and respect? You don't need to have the reward of going to heaven for that, because the reward is building a better society and having a better place to live in for you and your family and your community. And I didn't need the threat of hell to keep me in line either, because, again, the reward of living in a better society and feeling inside myself that I was trying to do my best to help others and help to build that better society. That's what drew me to humanism. But I didn't discover the word for it until 2015 when I was reading a newspaper article reading about the census. I think it was the census religion question. And they said there was an article about humanism in relation to that. And I thought, oh, that's what I am. I'm a humanist, right? And about the same time, Lyndon Story, who has been president of the Council of Australian Humanist Societies, he started out a discussion group on humanism here in Canberra. And I looked at that and I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I'll go along to that. Long story short, I ended up as convener of the ACT Humanist Society while Lyndon moved up to be president of the council. Then I became president of the council, and I realised that what we needed was an organisation where anyone around Australia could join and be with like-minded people, with other humanists, and start to build communities like the one Lyndon had started here in Canberra, anywhere in the country with support from a national organisation. And we'll talk a bit more about communities in one of our future live streams, I think. But yes, that's how I got into it. I haven't looked back. So 2015, 10 years later, I'm still helping to build the humanist movement in Australia with my friends and colleagues.
Yeah, great. Doing a great job, Marianne. We all kind of have similar stories, I guess. But would you agree that that is kind of the instigator? Is that religious thing or questioning your spirituality? Although you said, Marianne, more, it was coming from a compassionate position. So that was kind of the influence for you. But you did go to church and that sort of thing. So you had a
tried it out for a little while.
Yeah.
But it didn't work for me in the long run because I didn't like the behaviour I was seeing there.
Because they're not any better because they believe.
And the other thing was I don't see any need to believe in God. It just seems like stories that have been told down the ages to help explain the world and to help persuade people to treat each other better. And I think that's a good thing, but it's become corrupted over the ages. And now I think a lot of people in the upper leadership of the church, not all of them, obviously, but some of them, they're there because there's a lot of power and money concentrated at the upper levels of the church. And that's not a good reason to want to be in a leadership position. Yeah. I'm in a leadership position because I want to help people come together to build a better world, to work towards progressive social issues, and to enable and inspire people to do what they are passionate about in building that better world.
Yeah, and that comes from you. Like, this is the contradiction about religion, is that religious people will say you need to be religious to be moral. But when I look at that, I think your belief is your morals are coming from fear because you're being told you should do it. Whereas for us, without belief, our morals come from inside. So,
But, you know, in some sense, there's a confusion here because what Marianne is talking about in terms of the churches and people in the churches and people who wear the religion badge, it's really cultural beliefs in terms of the way that they're operating. You know, there is no difference in terms of that uncompassionate, selfish, mad-driven thought in terms of apologetics and mission, secular or religious, whatever label we want to do it. It is something of the personality. It is something of the belief system.
That's very true. You can have that kind of personality in any organisation, including in humanist ones. Brian, I just want to check in with you. Do we have any comments in in our
No,
channel?
I'm on the comment page. So look, we've actually got 3 people viewing at the moment, and those people that are watching, please feel free to comment. Are you guys putting comments in private chat here?
Can you check if they can, Brian? Because I had a quick look at it earlier, and it seemed like comments might have been turned off. So
Okay. I think you changed the setting, because that's through YouTube. So that setting, I'm sure, was changed so that people could comment. You know what? You guys just talk. What I will do is try and I want to see if I can comment.
Oh, Vince has just put in a comment.
okay,
Testing.
good.
All right, there you go. There you go.
It is working.
It is working. Good.
Right. But there's something, what you said, Marianne, that really gelled with me, this notion that if you don't subscribe to my religion, then you can't be good. And that's what really attracted me to humanism, because I found a lot of the religious people were saying, if you're not a Catholic like me, or if you're not a Baptist like me, these days I hear if you're not a Muslim like me, or not a Hindu like me, you can't be a good person. So it's very exceptionalist, and it's very exclusionary. And that's my main attraction to humanism, that you can be a good person irrespective of what your metaphysical beliefs or non-beliefs are. And
Absolutely.
I find humanism to be, for me, humanism to be the only worldview, or pretty much the only worldview I've come across that is without exception universalist. It recognises our common humanity and our common empathy for our fellow human beings, and hopefully other sentient creatures as well. It's not judgmental. It doesn't put you into boxes.
I can give a concrete example of that. Here in the Canberra community that I've been running for many years now, one of the people who comes most often and is most engaged with our community is a Christian. And he knows that he's not a humanist, but he loves the humanist values as we've expressed them, the 9 values of Humanists Australia, which are based on the Declaration of Modern Humanism, which is an international declaration. Yes, he loves our values, and he loves talking about topics that are of interest to humanists. And he tells me that he feels like a very welcome guest in our community. And he also tells me that the support he's received from our community has been even better for him as he was going through troubles in his life than the support that he was getting through his Christian community. So I'm pleased that we're able to offer that support to him.
That's
Awesome.
That is amazing.
Can I a question? All right. So some religious people, I think, will refer to humanism as a religion, or even atheism. And well, I mean, it's not, because you need a God, don't you?
You don't, Brian. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, you'd be just
definitions of religion is not exclusively pertain to theism.
Right.
So there's huge confusion that we have in the population around cultural beliefs, around religious beliefs, around what's called secular beliefs and what's called religious beliefs. It is utterly confused. So religion is not defined by a belief in God. That's just simply thing. And so my question is, in terms of Marianne's Christian friend, yes, who's joined in with the Canberra group, if someone is saying they hold to humanist values, why would they not be a humanist?
We go by the IHU minimum statement of humanism. It's built into our constitution, and it's it's a requirement that anyone who wants to join Humanists Australia signifies that they accept the minimum statement on humanism. And that states that humanism is non-theistic. And there is a difference there between being religious and being theistic. So, for example, Buddhists are religious but non-theistic. And the Unitarian Universalists are also religious but not theistic. We do have some Unitarian Universalist members, but my friend in the Canberra community is a theist, and so he could not accept the IHEU minimum statement on humanism. But he's still welcome to come to our community events, and he's welcome to participate. We know he's not a humanist. He recognises he's not a humanist. It's not a problem. He's still a good friend and a good contributor to our community.
And we're a good community and open to all people. His heart's in the right place as far as treating people with respect and whatever else. And that's fine. That's fine.
Yes, but does your friend understand what theism is? Because a lot of people a lot of Christians who, read what's being written in terms of the literature, claim that they're theists, but may not be the theist in terms of the way that the humanist statement has been written. I am a symbolic thesis in terms of my scholarship in studies in religion, meaning that I recognize and accept that myth is something where we should understand as symbols or signs, that are important to guide our lives. And there are many communities to which I think hold a symbolic theism, but the irony is that they can call it atheism and they can also call it agnosticism. I refer to Don Cooper, who was known as the atheistic priest and developed the Sea of Faith movement. But in many ways, he also is a symbolic theist. And I will note that I'm the president of the Sea of Faith in Australia and a humanist. So again, there's this huge populist confusion about what various religions actually say, what various theologians actually say, and the fact that often in debates and conversation there is this crossing over in miscommunication.
Yep, that's fair enough. It's a confusing topic. Brian, you're about to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, so we've spoken about the religion part, but it is those other things. It's the ethical side of it. It's the generally progressive position that humanism takes, and
it tends to make us left-wing in our political views, but we try not to be political. But that stems from the compassion part of it. Compassion is really important for humanists.
And on the left, not being political, for me personally, I am on the left. In general, I would say that on the left, there is more compassion because what they want politically is generally to do more with social issues and helping people, equality, all of those types of things, whereas on the right, that's kind of not the important. It's about yourself and getting out there and succeeding on your own and kind of not worrying. So I know that's not being very nuanced about it, but basically the right is a little bit less caring and the left is just a bit more kind of caring about people.
I think the right wing has traditionally been about freeing up the economy and about helping big businesses grow. And that doesn't always tie in with the needs of the common people.
Mm.
But we're seeing the growth of right-wing populism across the world. And that's an interesting sort of juxtaposition of concepts. Right wing meaning we're in favour of business and we want the economy to grow, and then populism being, well, this is what all of the common people want.
Yeah. So on the right, populism, it's to me, it's not genuine, because the majority of people do want what's good for them, and essentially what they try and do on the right is things that are good for not the majority, but for the minority. So it's a contradiction, and it's not an honest. I know it's a term that exists, but it's not genuine. Maybe in their own minds they think that it's for people and that people want that. But even in America, where they're taking away social safety nets and things like that, and that's all right-wing supposed populism. But even centrists in America at the moment, what they want socially and whatever is more to help people out. They don't want to lose their Medicare, their version of it, and those types of things, which is all very left-wing and socialist, really.
I was looking at Michael Dove's analysis of the last census results just the other day again, and he's got one graph that shows the political leanings of those who marked in the last census that they belong to a particular religion, and those who marked the no religion box. And the people who marked the no religion box had a significant tendency to vote for the Australian Labor Party. Here in Australia, the Australian Labor Party is one of the more leftist parties. So people who are non-religious have a greater preponderance to vote Australian Labor Party, which to me showed that they have more of a commitment to building a strong social net, because that's what's quite distinctive between the Australian Labor Party and the more conservative Liberal Party and National Country Party, and Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, for example.
I find that really surprising that Christianity has become right-wing when Jesus was all about compassion and helping people. Yeah. So why has Christianity...
In what sense? Because these claims are being made. Christianity has all turned right. But, you just had the election of a new pope who, if you actually examine into political terms, he's on the left side of the spectrum.
That was a wealth development.
Yeah, so the Catholics make up many millions of representatives of this Christian religion. So I think the problem is that we've got to be careful in making this sort of populist type statements, because it is political. It's political rhetoric.
Yeah.
In terms of trying to describe, other groups, whether they're religious or secular, and we've got to get out of that sort of thinking.
Vince has popped in with a comment on that. Populism sets up inner groups and outer groups. It's divisive. And you see that very strongly in the populism in the US at the moment, very strongly. The right-wing government being highly favourable towards white men in particular, and everyone else, particularly immigrants, are out in the cold.
So if that is the popular position, then everyone's a racist over there, or most of them are. If that's populism and that is the popular position, and people agree with that, then they're racist and they don't like.
Not necessarily. Again, this is political rhetoric that comes from a numbers game. So this type of populism works on trying to work the statistics to argue what is the majority of common thinking. And it's a game. It is a statistical game that in political corrupt thinking.
Yeah, but that's one thing I like about humanism. Its commitment to, and when I read many of the manifestos and principles from the Humanists International and many of the national organisations around the world, almost invariably they include in there a commitment to democracy and pluralism and tolerance, and that's what really, another thing that really attracts me to humanism.
Yeah, it's a fundamental ethical position and just the compassion that's so lacking at the moment. And I keep going back to America because clearly, like, it's the best example of how messed up a country can be with their particular political leaders' positions. Is that everything that happens over there at the moment through Donald Trump, let's just say the name, is just horrible for society. So humanism, yeah, definitely opposes that and leans to the opposite side of that and cares more about people. I think that's the point.
We ignore the numbers for inclusion. Basically, what we are saying is that every single human being, and that's our focus, that's the focus of humanism, is the human being, with all the virtues and all the vices. It's every single human being, and we include them in our compassion.
And I'd like to include in that not just human beings, but all sentient creatures. And over the last few years now, more and more of the Humanists International's declaration has now included more strongly the interests of non-human sentient creatures. And along with that is the environment, a commitment to the environment, ecological sustainability. And these are becoming now more strongly worded in the latest declarations, humanist declarations around the world. But the key point here is humanism is not just about human beings. And there, I think a lot of people misunderstand what the term humanism means. And actually, I'm just writing two responses to the claims that humanism is anthropocentric and human-centric. That's not what humanism means. And we can talk about the origins of the word humanism. And Neville can say a lot as a historian in this area as well. But
I would like to respond because I think
you go on, Neville, just before you continue. So we've got a friend from America here. Claire is a friend of mine. I've known for
Claire.
a few years, and I put it out to a few people over there. Just mentioned it in a Twitter group, I think. And Claire's one of the good friends. It's always been there and supportive and jumps on live streams and things like that. So I just wanted to break in there and say hello to Claire very quickly.
Yeah, I wanted to. Les is absolutely correct, but it creates a dilemma or a paradox for the humanists organisation around the world, in that we should not be anthropocentric, that in the sense of believing that human beings are the center of the universe. So we do reject that, whereas perhaps in the past, in our history, that was a problem, that we had to come to realize and change our thinking. But at the same time, humanism is about trying to understand how human beings think. And so we can't be anthropocentric, putting ourselves in the center of the universe, but at the same time, our thinking is inescapably human, which means many, many, many different things. I mean, there is no single definition here of what human thinking is, but we can't, we continually fall into a fallacy, logically necessary, in the sense that the only way we can think about the external world is a projection from our internal processes of being human.
And if I could just, oh, go on, Marianne, after you.
I'm going to say that's what compassion is. It's about having an idea in your own mind of what it's like to be other people. And yes, necessarily it stems from that image and structure that you have within your own mind that projects what it's like to be someone else.
Comes from your own personal experience, and also applying imagination to put yourself in someone's situation, because clearly you can't be that person and live their situation. So that's where imagination comes in, and yeah, empathy and the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do you want to others? I got the post a little while ago.
I was going to comment on that. Maybe I'll do that later. That great poster, which is what I use in my talks as well.
Right.
So getting back to the word humanism and adding more to what Neville and Marianne were saying. So the word humanism was adopted in the 1800s to name the first named humanist movements. They adopted the name humanism from that Enlightenment strand of thinking that when we think morally, we only have our own human reason and human capacity to rely on. There is no supernatural realm. There is no God that dictates how we ought to live. All we have is to rely on our own human capacities to work these questions out for ourselves. Now, this doesn't mean that only humans are important, which goes back to the point I was making before, that more and more with humanist societies around the world, they're making this point stronger and stronger, that we have a moral obligation to all sentient creatures and not just to human beings.
We have a comment in the chat. Doesn't it sound a bit extremist? Extremely accepting of other people, maybe. Although, forgiveness is one of our values, but that doesn't mean that you should continue to allow someone to hurt you. You need to protect yourself. So, I mean, we can't be extremely accepting of everyone. Sometimes you have to control other people in order to keep society safe.
Depending on how you perceive extremism, to me, it's the opposite. Extremism, I don't know, is taking a particular thing and going over the top with it, a certain position.
On other people. We don't force humanism on other people.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the other thing. Yeah,
we accept that many people are religious. Many people need to be religious, and that's okay. They can be religious. They can do what they need to do in practicing their religion, as long as they don't
hurt anyone else. Is the whole thing. Once again, I come back to the golden rule. It's going to play its part so regularly because it is the most basic, most moral philosophy. It's objectively good philosophy, and it's the most basic. A religion's fine if you want to believe in a God or whatever. Go ahead, as long as whatever you're doing in your actions through that religion doesn't affect in a negative way the people that are around you. Personal religion I'm okay with. As soon as it becomes an organization and tries to push its point, it becomes a problem for me.
Maybe multi-millionaire in the chat can just expand a little bit more about what they mean by humanism being a bit extremist, and then maybe we can delve into that a bit more once I and we get a clearer insight into what you're referring to.
And while Claire is writing up that comment, Claire has said, forgiveness is a way to move on and not carry it. It's more for ourselves. I think forgiveness has two parts to it. The part that's for yourself, to allow you to let go of anger by forgiving someone else. And it is for others. So if someone forgives you, that allows you to let go of shame and guilt. So it's a two-way thing. I've written a fair bit about forgiveness, and in our YouTube channel we do have a video on the topic of forgiveness which we had a discussion about quite recently.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, Brian. After you.
Well, I was going to kind of just swing the topic a little bit, but still to do with humanism and how we became humanists. What are the influences as far as books and whatever in your life? For me personally, the big one for me was Carl Sagan, The Demon Haunted World, which was, I don't know if he ever described himself as a humanist, but to me, he is the embodiment of humanism. With his rational position, his compassionate outlook. He was one of the first people that I recall speaking out about climate change. There's a great video of him in Congress, I think in 1980, very, very early, saying that this is going to be a problem. It was like he was predicting the future. He knew because he had reason and intelligence and was aware and scientifically literate. Anyhow, yeah, that book, The Demon Haunted World, was the one that has been the biggest influence. And if I was to pick a hero in my life, it would probably be Carl Sagan. Does anyone else have that?
Yes, Bernard Williams, who died just at the turn of this century, who was an ethicist. And more broadly, as a philosopher, so many of the sort of conversations that we've had around ethics and identifying that as a core of what it is to be humanist and what humanism might mean as a system. Bernard Williams was the person that actually sort of expounded on that, and really brought both the humanities, the standing of the humanities, which was under attack when he was writing in the 1990s and still not being valued, and humanist philosophy. So he was a very precise person at a high level of philosophical thought in identifying and articulating that thinking.
For me, I think it was this is a difficult topic of conversation for us humanists, but Richard Dawkins. I read a lot of Richard Dawkins' books while I was a teenager. Back, it was
God Delusion was a big influence for me as well.
Yeah. His thoughts on human evolution and how we came to be, they meant to me that there's really no need for a God to create human beings. I could see how the processes would work for us to come about. And it's been quite a painful journey for me to see Richard Dawkins shift from being a true humanist to becoming someone who feels like they can exclude an entire population of people, trans people.
It's very disappointing because I was a big fan too, and I still respect his body of work, but it's a bit disappointing that later on in his life he's taken that direction, which is unfortunate for me.
He takes a scientific point of view that sex is binary. That's what he says, but he's completely ignoring all of the intersex people. We know that's a significant proportion of the population. That they're a small minority, but of the entire population, but there are still people out there who don't fit into the binary system, and he's ignoring them. And we don't want to ignore people. Also, people should be free to live their own lives the way they want to live, and they should be supported in doing that. So it's terribly disappointing to me, his stance on transgender people now.
Yeah.
Les, did you
in my early years, which is now decades ago, I think the big influences then in drawing out humanist thinking in me was Bertrand Russell, Paul Kurtz, who had a leading position, might have been president the American Humanist Association for a while. He just died a number of years ago now. Kit Moyuat, who ran a shocking series on British radio. So,
another American friend, Purple Rhymes with Orange, is also a friend that's been around for forever. So they are on board too. It's great to see you, Purps.
Greetings,
Sorry.
Kit Moyuat ran a shocking series of radio programs. I think it was on ABC National or something like that in the UK, shockingly claiming that you can be good without religion. So that was quite seminal. And there were many authors, other humanist authors as well in those early years. But that was some of the prominent ones. I was going to comment on your poster that you've got behind you, which is the same poster that I hold up when I do my talks on morality, because it shows how all of the major world's religions, when they're at their best, I emphasize this, when they are at their best, subscribe to the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is universal. This is a universalist ethic, which can be expressed in different ways. I'm a utilitarian, so a popularized version of that is the greatest good for the greatest number. So it can be expressed in different ways, but it's this common universal moral sentiment of universal regard for all human beings and all sentience, whoever you are, wherever you are, however rich you are, whatever sex or gender you are. It's that universalism that's encapsulated in that. But what I would like to see in that poster is the inclusion of non-religious worldviews like humanism and rationalism. Maybe they'll do that. I know the people who made that was from the interfaith, a group of interfaith people. But I'm hoping one day they'll include on there the non-religious worldviews as well, because it really is truly universal.
It is universal. It's objectively moral. It's just an objectively moral thing. So yeah, that's great. And I got that poster after I joined Humanists Australia. I can't remember who put it out there, but it came from, I think it was a religious group actually that were selling it or putting it out.
No, it is. It's from an interfaith group. I've actually, when I do my talks, I give the URL where people can download the PDF and print it out for themselves.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what they were called. I've still got the paper somewhere. But anyway, I ordered it through them after becoming a member and seeing that. I thought, that I can totally relate to that. So I got it. I'm going to stick it up. I only got a frame for it this week earlier on, so I've stuck it in the frame.
Great.
Somewhere. Yes.
Brian, multi-trillionaire has come back.
Okay, yes. I've noticed a couple of comments there.
So on that comment, I just wanted to pick up maybe the first sentence in that. Humanist values, particularly the emphasis on human rights, can be used as a tool for moral dominance. Right. Well, I personally disagree with that. I've read a little bit about how the Universal Declaration of Human Rights came about, and it's a combination of what from 1400s or 600 years of thinking about human rights. So I have the opposite view, and I think one thing that's characteristic about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it was pretty much agreed by all nations when it was signed off in 1948. It became a legal instrument in 1966, so it's legally binding to the nations that signed up to it. And here's the thing: the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was agreed to not just by the Western nations, because this is often a common criticism of the Universal Declaration, that it's a Western document. No, it's not. It was agreed to by the Chinese, by, I think the Russians in the end abstained, but agreed by many of the Southeast Asian nations. It is truly a universal document. I'd be asking multimillionaire, if you think it's a tool for moral dominance, once again, I'd ask for, if you can maybe example one or two instances of where you think that's happened, and maybe we could then respond to that.
A multi-billionaire is not a billionaire, but actually a multi-trillionaire, Les. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. I think also I'd add to Les's comments that to my previous comments about political rhetoric, this is again, unfortunately, this is the negative universality. The negative universality is that in political rhetoric, you can make reference to the values to create a very distorted argument in dominance, in political dominance. I mean, obviously, we see this in terms of dictators, oligarchies around the world, where they will mouth respect for human rights, as they say, we respect human rights, and this is our examples X, Y, and Z, but there's no substance there.
So we've got about just under 10 minutes to go. I was wondering if we could come back around and maybe sum up for each of us, why are you a humanist?
I would have to say, for me personally, and I think it's in my description on the website, is that it's just holistic. It covers all areas for me: my non-religion, my compassionate side, ethical side. We spoke about leaning left, quite heavily left in my case. So religiously, I like the fact that it acknowledges science and takes that on board with its view of the world. It considers science. And it's just holistic. It covers all areas. So humanism for me, as I say, it was always there and I was aware of it, but I didn't quite commit to saying, you know what, I'm just a humanist until a little bit later on. But in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that I was. So yeah, it's holistic.
Les?
Yeah, I suppose because it encapsulates, I put it into an acronym, RECEIVE. It encapsulates these 6 elements of a good life. And the first is relying on reason and evidence in apportioning our beliefs, not going in for superstition. The second thing is it draws on our empathy and compassion in our moral lives. And the third thing, it truly values human autonomy and human dignity. And they're the 6 elements, I think, that really attracts me to humanism.
How about you, Neville?
It's the inclusion, and much of what Les has said and Brian has said, and previously what you've said, Marianne, it is not being political in the most negative ways, but actually looking at power relations in an open way that listens to others, really listens to others, and also stop being populist and actually pick up a book, written by an expert, or go to a website that's produced by experts, and when I say experts, I'm talking about the Global College. The Global College is those persons who've spent their lives, in looking at a topic, a theme, maybe many topics and themes, but they have invested in learning. And
expertise needs to be respected.
Yeah, respected. And I think this is it. Humanists learn. That's the true spirit of humanism, is the spirit of learning.
And for myself, I am a humanist because humanism is a framework for living that compassionate and ethical life, for answering the big questions about human existence. And I see those questions, the 5 big questions for me are, how can I find meaning and purpose in life? And for me, that's working towards a better world with people that I care about. How can I understand the world? How does the world work? And that's through science and evidence and reason. How can I find comfort when I'm grieving? And that's by having warm relationships with the people who I'm working with for that better world, and with my community and with my family. How do I know what's right and what's wrong? And that's working towards that more compassionate society where everyone is included and respected. And how can I deal with the fear of my own death? I mean, that's something a lot of people turn to religion to for comfort. For me, it's, well, I lose consciousness every night in that dreamless period in between, in my sleep. So why shall loss of consciousness with death be anything different from what I experience each night? It's not something to be feared.
And we've all been dead before we were born, so we've all had that experience for a long time. So, and it wasn't scary and it wasn't painful. So,
So for me, humanism ticks all the boxes of how to understand how to live life.
And can I go as far as to say that I think that the humanist values, in going forward for the future, the values that it embodies for me are almost the only way towards a brighter future. Because if we don't have that compassion, if what's happening with the government in America right now, and the oligarchy, and the fact that it's all about money and the people are just getting thrown out, if we're going to have that attitude, we're done. Forget it. We are done. So I would go as far as to say that compassionate side of humanism, if we don't have that, then just forget about it. And I think that humanism is that important.
Yes. Purple rhymes with orange has just disclosed, as a factor or reference to loss. And I just wanted to say that I respect that. I really do, and I think this is what humanists are about: is compassion, as we've been talking about. I lost the love of my life 8.5 years ago. So I think humanists are not some sort of monolithical group of people who think the same. This is not a cult. We think different, and we think differently because of our life experience. So in my engagement with my friends here, with Brian, Marianne and Les, we come into very strong, sturdy, very firm sort of discussions that sort of at least initially there is a feeling of disagreement. And the thing is, I'm the particular type of humanist who's very sensitive about loss in people's experience, and not only just loss but also exclusion. And I think this is some of the problems in the past with humanism, that people have read it as being a little bit a little exclusive club, going to sort of what Les was saying about the fact that we have now had to repent, if you like, and learn to include all sentient beings. So, I think I very respectfully, to purple rhymes with orange, I feel in that loss.
All right, we need to wrap it up now, but thank you very much, Brian, for organising this, and thank you, Liz and Neville, for coming along and contributing to the discussion. Thank you very much for everyone who commented on the live stream as it was in progress. If after hearing about humanism you feel like humanism is for you, please do come and visit humanistaustralia.org and offer your support to the organisation. You can do that in many different ways, by joining us or by giving a donation or by leaving a bequest in your will or by coming on board as a volunteer, as Neville, Les and Brian have done. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Marian, just before you, because that was a lovely finish up, I was just going to suggest, first, thank you to our international viewers here as well. I really appreciate you jumping on. It's great to see you again. Now, this is going to be an ongoing thing, the live streams. So we have a few, it's probably, we've left it a bit late to be able to talk about the specific things that we've got coming up, but there are already future live streams scheduled, and we're going to have special guests on. We'll talk more about that down the track. But yeah, this is going to be an ongoing thing. So anybody that's there, please come back, and we'll try and do it fortnightly. We'll see how we go, and that'll develop down the track. We'll see how consistent we are with it. But yeah, so yeah, thanks everyone. Sorry, Marianne.
We also have our regular program of Zoom type events where people can all come in and engage in conversations about humanism. I run What is Humanism once every 2 months, and Finding Fulfillment once every 2 months. Members of Humanists Australia are welcome to come along to our members circle as well. And we have a monthly speaker. Les, next one of those is Carolyn Winsenreid, is that right?
Yes, that's session 3 in her series on religious trauma.
All right, so hopefully we'll see you at some of those events. All right, thanks everyone.
I'm just going to jump in. Sorry, I'm just going to try and do this to finish up with. But I seem to be messing up. Sorry. Okay. All right, bye guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Use your eyes, know yourself, realize, understand and empathize. We could learn to feel the world with love.